forgotten artist hired a single father to pretend to be her date, but when he spoke at dinner, the room fell silent. Amara Delaney used to be a famous artist. Her paintings were so full of emotion that people said they could feel her work speak to them. At one point, her life was perfect. She was rich, well-known, and loved by art critics everywhere. Her dream had come true, and she believed it would last forever. But everything fell apart, slowly but painfully, until she was left with nothing. Now, Amara lives in a small, old apartment in Brooklyn. The walls are bare except for a calendar with bill due dates circled. In the corner, her art supplies sit untouched, collecting dust. Once, her studio was full of color and life, but now it feels empty. She wakes up every morning, makes a weak cup of coffee, and looks out of the window with tired eyes. Her curly black hair, which used to flow freely, is tied in a messy bun. Her clothes are plain faded jeans and oversized sweaters so different from the bright, stylish outfits she used to wear when she felt alive. Amara wasn't always like this. 10 years ago, she was at the top of her career. Galleries fought to show her work. Collectors paid thousands for her paintings, and her name was mentioned alongside the greatest artists of her time. But then came the review. A powerful art critic, Julian Greer, attended one of her exhibitions. She had been excited, even nervous, to hear what he thought, but his words cut her deeply. He called her work predictable and uninspired. At first, she told herself it was just one opinion, that it didn't matter. But Julian's voice was loud in the art world, and soon his words spread. Galleries stopped calling. Buyers canceled their orders. Invitations to events disappeared. It was like a door slammed shut, and no matter how hard Amara tried, no one would let her back in. The worst betrayal came not from critics, but from her best friend, Clara. Clara had always been Amara's closest supporter. They had gone to art school together, shared their dreams, and celebrated each other's successes. But as Amara's career fell apart, Clara's began to rise. Amara later found out that Clara had shared her personal struggles, her father's illness, and her financial troubles with the same critics who turned against her. Clara made Amara look weak and unworthy, all while climbing higher herself. Heartbroken and humiliated, Amara withdrew from the art world. She stopped painting and stopped talking to her old friends. She built a wall around herself, telling everyone she was fine. But she wasn't fine. She was lonely, ashamed, and angry at herself for letting it all happen. Now, Amara teaches art classes at a community center to make ends meet. Her students are mostly retired people looking for a hobby or teenagers who don't care about art at all. Teaching pays the bills, but it doesn't make her happy. She tries to put on a cheerful face for her students, but deep down, she feels stuck. Her days are the same. She wakes up, teaches, comes home, eats dinner alone, and goes to bed. She doesn't paint anymore. Sometimes, late at night, she picks up a pencil and tries to sketch, but her hands feel awkward, as if they've forgotten how to create. When she looks at her work, she feels ashamed. It doesn't look like the work of the great artist she used to be. But Amara still dreams. She dreams of starting over in a new city where no one knows her. She imagines opening a small gallery and painting freely again. She wants to feel alive, to feel proud of her work, and to find people who believe in her. But every time she thinks about it, a voice inside her says, "It's too late. No one remembers you. You're not good enough anymore." Regret is Amara's constant companion. She regrets trusting Clara. She regrets letting Julian's words stop her. She regrets giving up when she should have fought harder. But most of all, she regrets losing the joy she used to feel when she painted. Amara isn't perfect, and she knows it. She can be stubborn and pushes people away when they try to help her. Sometimes she hides her feelings with sharp words or sarcasm, but she's also kind. She stays late after her classes to help her students, even when she's tired. She watches her neighbors' kids when they need help, and she always remembers to wish them a happy birthday. Her apartment tells the story of her life. There are unfinished paintings leaning against the walls, their surfaces blank or half covered in faded colors. A sketchbook sits on her desk, full of abandoned ideas. But there's also her father's favorite painting, one she made when she was 16, hanging on the wall. It reminds her of who she used to be and the man who believed in her dreams more than anyone else. Amara feels stuck, like her life is on hold. She doesn't know how to move forward, and the weight of her past mistakes feels too heavy to carry. But she doesn't realize something important. She still has strength. Every day she gets up and keeps going, even when it's hard. Change is coming for Amara, even though she doesn't see it yet. Life has a way of surprising us, and her story isn't over. Something or someone is about to enter her life and remind her of the artist she truly is. It started on a rainy Thursday, one of those gray and remarkable days when everything feels slow and heavy. Amara sat at her desk in the community center's small art room, cleaning brushes after her last class. Outside the window, raindrops blurred the view of the street, and the hum of distant traffic filled the quiet space. She could hear her students' chatter fading as they left, some waving goodbye, others too distracted to notice her. Amara was lost in her routine until she heard a knock at the door. She glanced up, surprised her classes were over, and no one usually visited her here. A woman stepped inside, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. She was tall, elegant, and immaculately dressed in a beige coat that probably cost more than Amara made in a month. Her hair was neatly tied back, her makeup flawless, but her eyes carried a weight that Amara recognized, someone who had lived through disappointment. "Amara Delaney?" the woman asked, her voice firm but polite. Amara hesitated, then nodded. "That's me. Can I help you?" The woman stepped closer, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "My name is Vivian Hart. I work in event planning. I've been looking for you for weeks." Amara blinked, unsure how to respond. It had been years since anyone had looked for her, and certainly not with that kind of urgency. She shook Vivian's hand cautiously, her fingers still smudged with dried paint. "Look, if this is about an art show or something, I don't really do that anymore," Amara said, already preparing to dismiss whatever this woman was offering. Vivian smiled faintly, as if she expected that response. "It's not about an art show. I need your help, and I'm willing to pay for your time. Can we talk?" Curiosity sparked in Amara, but she kept her expression guarded. "Sure. Talk about what?" Vivian glanced around the messy art room, her eyes landing on the mismatched chairs and paint-splattered tables. "Not here," she said, her tone suggesting she wasn't used to places like this. "Can we go somewhere quieter? Coffee?" "My treat." Amara hesitated. A part of her wanted to say no, to retreat back into her safe bubble where no one expected anything of her. But another part, the one that still longed for something more, urged her to see what this was about. She sighed, wiping her hands on a towel. "All right, there's a cafe down the street." They walked in silence, the rain tapping against their umbrellas. The cafe was warm and cozy, a small haven from the dreary weather outside. They sat at a corner table, and Vivian wasted no time getting to the point. "I'm organizing a gala next weekend," Vivian began, stirring her tea. "It's for the unveiling of a new exhibition at the Lambert Museum. A lot of important people will be there: artists, critics, patrons. It's going to be one of the biggest events of the season." Amar frowned, unsure where this was going. "Okay, and what does that have to do with me?" Vivian hesitated for the first time, her confident demeanor faltering just slightly. One of the featured artists dropped out at the last minute. She was supposed to attend with her husband, and they were going to be the highlight of the evening. Now I'm scrambling to fill that gap, and I need someone who can fit the part. Amar's confusion deepened. "You need me to what? Paint something for the exhibition?" "No," Vivian said quickly. "I need you to attend as my guest, specifically as my date." Amara blinked, certain she had misheard. "Excuse me?" Vivian leaned forward, her tone urgent now. "I need someone who understands the art world, someone who can hold a conversation with the people at that event, someone who looks the part of a confident, accomplished artist. When I saw your work, your old work, I knew you'd be perfect." Amara's chest tightened. The mention of her old work stirred a mix of pride and pain she hadn't felt in a long time. But this request, it sounded absurd. "Why would you need to bring a fake date? Don't you have someone else you can ask?" Vivian sighed, looking out the window as if searching for the right words. "I've been under a lot of pressure lately. My career is riding on the success of this gala. If it fails, I lose everything I've worked for. The truth is, I made a mistake. I may have exaggerated certain details to my client, like having a charming, talented date who could impress everyone. She glanced back at Amara, her expression almost pleading. That's where you come in. Amara laughed, but it was bitter. You want me to pretend to be someone I'm not? That's ridiculous. No, I want you to be exactly who you are, Vivian said, her voice steady. The artist who captivated people with her work, the person who still has something to say, even if she's forgotten how to say it. I'll pay you for your time, of course, generously. Amara stared at her, the words sinking in. The idea was insane, and yet something about it struck a chord. She had spent so long hiding, convinced the world didn't want her anymore. Now, here was someone asking her to step back into the spotlight, even if it was only for a night. I don't think I'm the person you're looking for, Amara said quietly. Vivian's expression softened. I think you are. You just don't see it yet. Amara wanted to refuse, to walk away, and forget this conversation ever happened. But a small voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been waiting for. A chance to face the world again, even if it wasn't under the best circumstances. She sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. All right, she said finally. I'll do it, but don't expect miracles. Vivian smiled, relief washing over her face. Thank you, Amara. You won't regret this. Amara wasn't so sure. As she walked home that evening, the rain soaking through her coat, doubt crept in. What had she just agreed to? Pretending to be someone she wasn't? Stepping into a world she had left behind? It felt like a mistake, but it also felt like the first step towards something she couldn't quite name. Something that scared her, yes, but also made her heart beat a little faster. The days leading up to the gala passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Amara felt like a stranger in her own life, swept up in the chaos Vivian brought with her. Each day seemed to bring a new demand, a new complication, and most surprisingly, a new person she hadn't expected to meet. The first complication was a man named Daniel. Vivian introduced him as her assistant, though Amara suspected handler was a more accurate term. Daniel was tall and wiry, with glasses that slid down his nose and a clipboard seemingly glued to his hand. He had a knack for appearing exactly when Amara didn't want him to, rattling off lists of things she needed to do. Wardrobe fitting at 3, he said one morning, not even bothering with a greeting as he stepped into her tiny apartment. Hair and makeup trial at 5, and you'll need to rehearse your introduction speech tonight. I emailed you a draft. Amara gawked at him. Speech? I thought I was just supposed to smile and nod. Daniel pushed his glasses up his nose and sighed like a schoolteacher dealing with a difficult student. You're representing Vivian at this gala. You'll need to introduce yourself, say a few words about your work, and engage with the guests. They'll expect you to be compelling. Compelling, Amara repeated, deadpan. Great. I'll add that to my list of talents. Daniel didn't laugh, but his lips twitched slightly, as though he was holding one back. Just read the draft. Vivian wants you polished, not panicked. Then there was Mia, the stylist Vivian hired to transform Amara into someone fit for the spotlight. Mia was short, bubbly, and endlessly enthusiastic, which grated on Amara at first. Oh my gosh, your hair has so much potential, Mia exclaimed as she stood behind Amara in the salon chair. We're going for effortless, elegant. You're going to look stunning. Amara grimaced. Can't we just go for effortless? I'm not trying to be the next red carpet sensation. Mia laughed, undeterred. Honey, you don't have to try. You just have to let me work my magic. Despite her skepticism, Amara found herself softening toward Mia. The stylist chattered away as she worked, filling the silence with stories about her eccentric clients and her childhood dream of becoming a fashion designer. By the time the session was over, Amara almost didn't recognize herself in the mirror. Her hair, usually thrown into a messy bun, now fell in soft waves around her face. Her makeup was subtle but flawless, enhancing her features without overwhelming them. See? Mia said, beaming. Effortless elegance. Told you. Amara smiled despite herself. Okay, you win this round. The third person to enter Amara's life was the most unexpected of all. Leo, a single father Vivian hired to pose as Amara's partner for the evening. Amara hadn't been thrilled about the idea of adding yet another stranger to the mix, but Vivian insisted it was necessary. We need someone who can complement you, Vivian explained. Someone charming, relatable, and easy on the eyes. Trust me, Leo will make you look good. Leo arrived at their first meeting with a boyish grin and a toddler in tow. His daughter, Ellie, was a bundle of energy, darting around the room with wide eyes and sticky hands. Sorry about this, Leo said, scooping her up before she could knock over a vase. Babysitter canceled last minute. Amara raised an eyebrow. This is the guy who's supposed to make me look good? Leo chuckled, unfazed. Don't worry, I clean up well, and I promise Ellie won't be tagging along to the gala. Despite her initial doubts, Amara couldn't help but warm to Leo. He was disarmingly honest, quick to laugh, and refreshingly free of pretense. During their practice sessions, he surprised her with his ability to hold a conversation about art, even admitting that he'd once dabbled in painting himself. I wasn't any good, he said with a shrug, but I loved it. Ellie's got the creative bug, though. She's always drawing on the walls. Amara smiled. Sounds like she's got potential. Maybe I should give her a few lessons. Leo's eyes lit up. She'd love that. You'd be her hero. As the gala approached, Amara found herself juggling more than she ever thought she could handle. Between Daniel's relentless schedules, Mia's makeovers, and Leo's easy charm, she felt like she was being pulled in 100 different directions. But amidst the chaos, she began to notice something surprising. She was changing. For years, she had kept the world at arm's length, convinced that no one cared about her or her work. But these people, Vivian, Daniel, Mia, Leo, were forcing her out of her shell. They challenged her, annoyed her, and, in their own ways, supported her. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Amara sat alone in her apartment, staring at an old canvas she hadn't touched in years. Her fingers itched to pick up a brush, to create something, anything. She hesitated, then reached for her paints. The colors felt foreign at first, her strokes hesitant and uneven. But as she worked, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time: joy. The next day, she showed the unfinished painting to Leo. What do you think? She asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Leo studied it for a moment, then nodded. It's beautiful. Feels like there's a story behind it. Amara smiled, a small, tentative smile. Maybe there is, but not everything was smooth sailing. Tensions began to rise as the gala drew closer. Vivian grew more demanding, snapping at Daniel when things didn't go perfectly. Mia and Leo had a heated argument over Amara's dress for the event, with Mia insisting on something glamorous and Leo advocating for something more understated. Amara found herself caught in the middle, struggling to maintain her composure. Guys, it's just a dress, she said, exasperated. It's not just a dress, Mia insisted. It's a statement. You need to walk into that room and own it. Leo crossed his arm. She needs to be comfortable. She's not a mannequin. Amara sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. I'll try on both. Okay, can we call a truce? Amidst the chaos, a new complication arose. Clara, the former friend who had betrayed Amara years ago, reached out unexpectedly. She sent a message that was short but loaded. Asterix saw your name on the gala guest list. We should talk. Asterix. The message sent a jolt through Amara. She hadn't spoken to Clara since their falling out, and the thought of seeing her again filled her with a mix of anger and dread. She debated whether to respond, her finger hovering over the delete button. In the end, she didn't reply, but the encounter loomed over her like a storm cloud, threatening to disrupt everything she had worked for. As the night of the gala approached, Amara felt the weight of it all pressing down on her. She was stepping into a world she had abandoned, surrounded by people who might judge her, question her, or worse, ignore her entirely. But she wasn't alone. For the first time in years, she had a team of people by her side, each pushing her in their own way to be more than she thought she could be. And though she didn't know what awaited her at the gala, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to rewrite her story. The night of the gala arrived with a crisp chill in the air. The Lambert Museum sparkled like a jewel against the dark city skyline, its grand windows casting golden light onto the manicured gardens below. Cars pulled up one after another, delivering guests in elegant attire. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation and the low hum of polite conversation. Almara stood at the museum's entrance, her nerves coiling tighter with each passing second. She wore the dress Mia had fought so hard for, a flowing, emerald green gown that clung to her in all the right places without feeling overwhelming. Her hair was swept up in soft curls, and her makeup was understated but striking. She looked the part, but inside, she felt like an imposter. Leo stood beside her, impossibly confident in his tailored suit. He offered her a reassuring smile as he adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. "You've got this," he whispered, leaning closer. Amara tried to smile back, but her stomach churned. "Remind me again why I agreed to this?" "Because you're braver than you think," Leo said simply. Before she could respond, Vivian appeared, her sharp heels clicking against the marble floor. She looked radiant in a sleek black gown, but her eyes were sharp with stress. "Amara, Leo, you're on," she said, gesturing toward the grand staircase that led into the main hall. "Just breathe, smile, and let the magic happen." Amara nodded, but her palms felt clammy as she looped her arm through Leo's. Together, they descended the staircase, every step feeling heavier than the last. The room fell silent as they entered, dozens of pairs of eyes turning toward them. Amara felt exposed, like a deer caught in headlights, but Leo gave her arm a gentle squeeze, grounding her. "Smile," he murmured. She forced herself to smile, her gaze scanning the crowd. Among the faces, she recognized a few art critics, collectors, and even some of her old peers. Her heart skipped when she spotted Clara, standing near the center of the room, with a glass of champagne in hand. Their eyes met, and Clara's expression shifted surprise, then something that looked like regret. Before Amara could process the moment, a man in a crisp suit approached them, his smile warm and practiced. "Ms. Delaney, it's an honor to meet you. I've been an admirer of your work for years." Amara blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, thank you. That's kind of you to say." Leo stepped in smoothly, introducing himself and easing the tension. Amara watched him with a mix of gratitude and awe. He had a way of making people feel at ease, a skill she sorely lacked. As the night wore on, Amara found herself drifting between conversations, each one a delicate dance of small talk and carefully measured enthusiasm. She surprised herself by how well she managed, even earning a few genuine compliments on her insights about art. But the peace was short-lived. Toward the middle of the evening, Clara cornered her near the buffet table. "Amara," Clara said softly, her voice tinged with hesitation. "It's been a long time." Amara stiffened, her chest tightening. "It has," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight," Clara continued, her eyes searching Amara's face. "When I saw your name on the guest list, I wasn't sure if it was really you." Amara forced a smile. "Well, here I am." Surprise. Clara hesitated, then stepped closer. "Listen, I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to, but I need to say this. I'm sorry for what happened. I was selfish, and I let you down. You didn't deserve that." Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. Clara's betrayal had been a wound that never fully healed, and hearing her apology stirred a whirlwind of emotion. "I don't know if an apology can fix what you did," Amara said quietly. "I know," Clara admitted, "but I had to try. You were my best friend, Amara, and I miss you." Before Amara could respond, Vivian appeared at her side, her expression tense. "Amara, we need you. The curator wants to meet you." Amara nodded, grateful for the escape. She followed Vivian across the room, her mind racing. Clara's words had thrown her off balance, stirring up memories and doubts she had tried so hard to suppress. The meeting with the curator was brief but intense. He was an older man with a commanding presence, his questions probing but respectful. Amara managed to hold her own, even impressing him with her thoughts on the evolution of modern art. As the evening wound down, Vivian pulled Amara aside, her face unreadable. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice low. Amara's heart skipped. "What is it?" Vivian hesitated, then gestured toward the far end of the room. "The board member who sponsored this event, he's been asking questions about you. He knows your history, Amara. He knows you haven't been active in years." Amara felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he might confront you publicly," Vivian said. "You need to be prepared." Panic surged through Amara. She had worked so hard to hold herself together tonight, to prove she still belonged in this world. The thought of being exposed, humiliated in front of everyone, was unbearable. Leo appeared at her side, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on?" Amara explained quickly, her voice shaking. Leo listened intently, then placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "If he confronts you, you don't have to face it alone. I'll be right there with you." His words steadied her, but the tension remained. She felt like a ticking time bomb, waiting for the moment everything would fall apart. Sure enough, as the final speech of the evening began, the board member, a stern-looking man in a navy suit, approached her. "Ms. Delaney," he said, his voice loud enough to draw attention. "A word, if you don't mind." Amara's pulse raced as the room went silent. She felt every pair of eyes on her, the weight of their judgment pressing down on her chest. The man's gaze was sharp, his tone cutting. "I've been following your career, or rather, the lack of it, for some time. Tell me, what exactly have you been doing these past few years? Because from where I stand, it seems like you've been hiding." The question hung in the air like a dagger. Amara's mind raced, every excuse and justification she had ever told herself flashing before her eyes. But then she saw Leo standing nearby, his expression calm and steady. Something inside her shifted. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending. "You're right," Amara said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I have been hiding. I let my fear and my doubts keep me from doing what I love. But that ends tonight. Being here, surrounded by people who still believe in the power of art, that's reminded me of who I am. I may have lost my way, but I'm finding it again, and I'm not going to apologize for that." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of surprise and admiration. The board member's expression faltered, his sharp demeanor softening just slightly. "Well," he said finally, "perhaps it's time we see what you're capable of." Amara felt a surge of relief as the tension in the room eased. She had faced her fear, and though it hadn't been easy, she felt stronger for it. As the evening came to a close, Leo found her outside on the museum steps, the cool night air a welcome reprieve from the crowded hall. "You were amazing in there," he said, his smile warm. Amara looked at him, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," Leo chuckled. "I think you would have been just fine, but I'm glad I could help." For the first time in years, Amara felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild her life on her own terms. The city sparkled under a blanket of stars as Amara sat in her small, sunlit studio. The gala was a month behind her, yet its ripple effect had transformed her world. Her mind buzzed with ideas, her hands alive with the urgency of creation. For the first time in years, the walls of her studio bore the raw energy of works in progress, canvas after canvas, filled with vibrant strokes, daring contrasts, and reflections of the journey she had endured. The confrontation with the board member had been a turning point, but it was the encouragement she received afterward that truly ignited her spirit. Collectors had approached her, intrigued by the authenticity she had displayed, while critics whispered about her potential comeback. Amara no longer felt like an outsider looking in. She belonged again, not because of their approval, but because she had rediscovered her voice. Leo had stayed by her side throughout the whirlwind. His laughter filled the studio whenever he visited, often with his daughter Sophie in tow. The young girl loved exploring the space, her small fingers brushing against the brushes and jars of paint with wide-eyed wonder. Amara found joy in those moments, their simplicity a reminder of life's unexpected gifts. One morning, as sunlight poured through the windows, Leo arrived with coffee and pastries. Sophie trailed behind him, clutching a small notebook she had insisted on showing Amara. "Guess what Sophie made?" Leo said with a grin, placing the coffee on a cluttered workbench. Sophie held up her notebook proudly. "It's a book of painting, like yours." Amara knelt to Sophie's level, her heart warming at the child's excitement. She flipped through the notebook, filled with crayon drawings of rainbows, houses, and a few abstract shapes that reminded her of her own playful beginnings. "These are beautiful," Amara said sincerely, looking into Sophie's bright eyes. "You have a real talent, you know that?" Sophie beamed, and Leo's smile softened. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep in a cozy corner of the studio, Leo and Amara sat together, the hum of the city their backdrop. "I've been thinking," Leo began, breaking the comfortable silence. About what you said that night at the gala. About facing your fears. Amara tilted her head, curious. What about it? I've spent so much time focused on giving Sophie a stable life that I forgot to think about my own dreams, Leo admitted. Seeing you fight for yours, it made me realize I've been holding back too. Amara reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. You've been so strong for her, but you deserve to dream too, Leo. To build something that makes you happy. He looked at her with a depth that made her heart ache, as if he was seeing her for the first time in a new light. You make me happy, he said simply. Amara felt her breath catch, the words settling in her chest like the final piece of a puzzle. She smiled, tears threatening to spill, and squeezed his hand. As weeks turned into months, Amara's new body of work began to take shape. The pieces were bold, unapologetic, and deeply personal, capturing the essence of her journey from loss to renewal. Vivian had secured an exhibition for her at a smaller gallery, a stepping stone toward reclaiming her place in the art world. The night of the exhibition arrived with less fanfare than the gala, but felt more significant. The gallery buzzed with energy as visitors admired her work, their faces reflecting awe, curiosity, and even emotion. Amara stood by one of her favorite pieces, a swirling composition of blues and golds that represented her own transformation. Leo and Sophie arrived midway through the evening, their presence grounding her. Sophie darted from painting to painting, dragging her father along as she tried to decipher each one. Amara, look, Sophie exclaimed, pointing to a painting that resembled the notebook she had shown Amara weeks earlier. Amara laughed. You inspired that one, Sophie. It's called Beginnings. Sophie's eyes widened. Really? I'm in a painting? You are, Amara said, kneeling to meet her gaze. Because you reminded me how important it is to keep dreaming. By the end of the night, Amara felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known was possible. She had feared the world had forgotten her, but tonight proved that she had the power to remind them and herself of who she was. As the gallery emptied, Leo stayed behind to help her pack up. They worked side by side, the quiet of the space wrapping around them like a warm embrace. You did it, Leo said, breaking the silence. Amara paused, holding a canvas in her hands. We did it, she corrected, looking at him with gratitude. He shook his head. No, Amara, this was all you. I was just lucky to witness it. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the journey behind them and the promise of the future ahead. Amara leaned into him, their connection deeper than words could express. For the first time in years, she felt whole, not because of success or validation, but because she had reclaimed her life on her terms. And in Leo and Sophie, she had found a family she hadn't realized she needed. As they left the gallery, hand in hand, the city lights danced above them, and Amara felt a quiet certainty settle in her heart. She was ready to face whatever came next, not as the forgotten artist, but as a woman who had found her way back to herself. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Amara, a story of rediscovering courage, finding connection, and embracing the beauty of second chances. Amara's path reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim our dreams or to start over. No matter how lost we might feel, we all face moments of doubt where it feels like the world has moved on without us. But just like Amara, we can find our way back, often with the help of unexpected allies or by rediscovering the passion that once set our hearts on fire. Her story teaches us the power of resilience, the importance of vulnerability, and the gift of believing in ourselves again. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of someone who could use a little encouragement, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments, whether it's a dream you're chasing, a fear you've overcome, or a piece of art you've created in your own life. Let's celebrate those victories together. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt tales of triumph, growth, and inspiration. By doing so, you're helping us reach more people who might need a little light in their lives. Lastly, if there's someone in your life who could relate to Amara's journey, share this story with them. Sometimes, the right words or the right story can make all the difference. Thank you for being part of our community and for letting us share these stories with you. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep believing in the power of new beginnings. We'll see you in the next story.